Hey, good morning, everybody. It is great to be with you. It's the morning briefing. I'm actually here on the beach this morning in Surfside, California, and it is a gorgeous Saturday morning. I mean, it is beautiful. I can feel the sunshine on my face. It feels so nice. You see behind me there, it's very low tide, but the ocean is nice and calm, which belies what is going on out there. Of course, I'll get into that and so much more with you. Fresh in from a 2-day trip on board the Amigo. I want to thank everybody who was on board that trip. I enjoyed meeting you all, spending time with you all. It was really an exceptional trip in terms of the camaraderie. Now, if you're looking for white sea bass, yellowtail, bluefin tuna wide open, we didn't have it. And I'll go into great detail on this trip. But as far as Captain Mark Paisano Jr., the crew on board the Amigo, George down in the galley, and the people on board, it couldn't have gotten any better. And like I say, later on today, we'll have an exclusive interview with Mark Paisano Jr. up in the wheelhouse of the Amigo. We'll have a video on our fishing trip. And at the end of today's report, I'm going to go into greater detail on what we did on our 2-day trip. Had a lot of fun on board that one. But first of all, let's take you down south of the border to Ensenada, where the Pongueros are encountering a little bit of bumpy weather here. They're going to have that through Monday, and then it might get a little bumpy again. Still picking off a few bluefin, but as many of you know, when you put Sam De La Torre from Island Fishing and Phil Friedman from Friedman Adventures on the water at the same time, everything just goes to hell. And of course, I'm joking a little bit, but Sam was over on the Royal Star. I was talking to him from the Amigo. I don't know how they ended up. They were on a 3-day trip. I said, how's your fishing? He said, slow. And it wasn't just the Royal Star. It was everybody in San Diego. I mean, there were day-and-a-half trips, one that turned in, one bonita. Some guys just missed entirely. This fish is still around, but it is certainly off the bite right now. It's either moving or it's got its nose in the mud, just doesn't want to bite. And hopefully that light switch will flip on again. Now, this is going to create a whole bunch of people who say never fish on the full moon. It's awful. It's the worst fishing you'll ever experience. And then, of course, on the next full moon next month, we'll see a wide open bite, and then that will create a whole nother group of people who say the full moon is really great. Who knows what's going on? It's bluefin tuna, it's pelagic fish, and they do this. The term we use is put their nose in the mud. They just go off the bite. And we certainly have seen our share of really poor scores down in San Diego, and even boats who've been getting them on a regular basis are struggling right now. But the good news is they are seeing a lot of fish down there, and I mean a lot of fish. So high hopes that that kicks into gear. And this is no time to say, I'm just going to bring my light stuff. Hopefully we'll catch some of those smaller fish. Maybe I'll get a bite with the light stuff. You definitely want to have that 30 to 40 pound fluorocarbon, but you must have your heavy, 80 to 100 pound. You've got to have that, because really most of the fish that they're seeing, they're not biting, but they're seeing are the jumbos. I mean, that 125 to over 200 pound fish, they are seeing a lot of that fish. But here recently, it's just been very slow. Like you see the Pacific Queen, they're on a fish here. They're about to throw on the boat. Very few scenes like this over the past day or so. So it's been slow, actually a couple days back. Hopefully that bluefin gets on the bite. Now, Mark Paisano Jr., a few days ago, this is why I got so excited. On one of these recorded morning briefings, I predicted we'd have limits of bluefin tuna. Yet another prediction down the drain with Phil Friedman. When he was rolling back from Clemente 2 days ago, off Pyramid Head, only 3 miles, right off the head there, just surrounded by big bluefin tuna. They hooked to, and they were undergunned. They weren't ready for that grade of fish, but that fish had not been seen there all year long, so suggests to me some movement with regard to the fish. So there seems to be a good spread to the thing. I imagine that stuff's going to end up on Tanner Bank again this year if it follows a similar pattern that it has over the past few years. But right now, while we have been seeing it, it's just off the bite. And incidentally, the next day, Mark went out there and took a look at that fish, and it was just gone. Didn't see any. He saw 2 fish, he said, and that was all she wrote. So pretty darn poor fishing offshore right now, and we have a little bit of weather up as the guys on the Amigo were riding home last night and the galley kind of imploded. Mr. Toad's wild ride on the way home on the Amigo. It started getting snottier out there at San Clemente Island. And of course, Nicolas, where we fished our first day, I know I'm going to go into this in greater detail, but I just want to let you know, we just had that small window by 4 o'clock in the afternoon yesterday. It started to blow. It's unfishable up in the Channel Islands for the most part here today. All right, let's take you through some islands. Down there, Todos Santos, off Ensenada, there is a little bit of yellowtail, more actually than we've seen in quite some time, and we're certainly seeing that at the Coronado Islands right now. Some of the boats, the day boats, the guys that leave at 6 a.m., like the San Diego, the Grande, all those guys, some of those guys are going to stay committed to the bluefin. They're seeing way too much fish and feel like it's going to pop at any point in time. San Diego had 4 bluefin yesterday, but some other guys are starting to switch over to the Coronado Islands. And one of those guys is the Malahini, and that is my good friend Bill Wilkerson, who has a Father's Day trip and then a trip on Monday. He's going to be hitting the Coronado Islands, and there's been some yellows out there. The Mission Belle was out there yesterday, I believe it was, with 20 plus yellowtail at the island. So good signal. And as we've been telling you all year long, that's going to build and build and build. That should get really good here really soon. And it's showing more life than it has in a long time. Fluorocarbon. We love Opsin, as you know. www.opsinusa.com. Put in FA at checkout, and you'll get a free gift from Greg Brown and also a handwritten note in most cases, unless his little fingers are starting to fall out. But when you fish the islands down there, when you're within 12 miles of Mexican land territory, you do need a passport. So I thought I would remind you about that. Bill, again, with lots of room on his Monday trip. So if you'd like to join him on the Malahini, you can look and book at malahinisportfishing.com. Great way to get on board with Bill Wilkerson and the Malahini. We have 3 trips with Bill this year. Can't wait to do that. All right, let's continue moving up and talking about islands. San Clemente Island. Wow, I don't know what to say. I mean, there's been some hits, but it was overall pretty darn slow. We anchored up in an area where Jeff Markland the day before had on the Thunderbird out of Davies Locker. Jeff had 8 white sea bass, I think it was, and some yellowtail. Everybody was there. I mean, we looked out, there was the Friedman and the Thunderbird. We were there. The Eldorado was there, and it was slow overall. We had high hopes that we were going to pop some sea bass there, and we were there at, I think, 10 o'clock at night or so. Turned on the squid lights, tried to make some squid, didn't do it. Not enough there to make, but we hung in there. And in the morning, Martin Padilla, he hung a nice big fish and started to move around the stern with it, and it was a big sheep's head. At first, we were hoping that sea bass bite was going to get going. So pretty tough fishing. Jeff yesterday, however, did find some bigger grade yellowtail, 7 yellows, 22 to 28 pounds, so really beautiful grade of fish, and worked hard. Everybody worked hard over there, but for the most part, pretty darn tough. Santa Barbara Island, there's been some sea bass for private boaters, and at times it's been very good. A few yellowtail, good rock fishing. And then San Nicolas Island, where we spent most of our first day, no sign of the sea bass. There's been some sea bass taken there. Tucker was there on the Endeavor out of Ventura Sport Fishing the day before for 4 fish. And there's been some decent hits out there. But wow, it just didn't want to chew for us at all. And we gave it hell. Let me tell you, we really, really did. I'll go into more detail about it, but we looked at several areas, fished it hard, never got a bite on a sea bass. Never saw anything that resembled a sea bass. So we'll just have to wait and see. And now that island is in the weather, man. It's bad right now. Channel Islands, wow, there has been some awesome sea bass hits. The Aloha Spirit, the Ranger 85, the Endeavor, just to name a few. Really good sea bass fishing going on up there, but the weather has put the kibosh on it for now. It's just way too windy. Most boats are in the docks, if not all boats. It just got way too nasty, and you could see it coming yesterday at Nicolas. We felt it coming the day before. You could just see pretty much exactly as it was forecast. A gorgeous day for most of the day, and then by 4 in the afternoon it started to blow, and then we got out of there. But I want to let you know that there has been some really good fishing. Now let me take you up the coast, and then I'll get into our Amigo trip in greater detail. And of course, I'll have that video for you in a little bit so you can check that out. Moving up the coast, we continue to see some pretty darn good fishing. In fact, you could argue that the coast was better than offshore in the islands here the last few days. Down there in Ensenada, they've had some good sand bass fishing around several little areas, sandy areas that they used to fish down there. Moving up to the San Diego area, some of the local boats there with some good calico bass fishing, a little bit of sand bass. Calicos mostly shorts, but good action for the guys, and some bonita and occasional yellowtail along the coast also. Same thing there at Dana, they're catching some stuff. Now, as you move up to San Pedro in this zone here, these guys have been fishing sculpin. I left Catalina out because a lot of guys are doing these combo trips where they roll out, limit out on sculpin. Everybody's got some great eating fish to take home, and then they go to Catalina Island where there's been decent fishing. I mean, there's been some bonitas, some barracuda, lots of short bass, some yellowtail. Pursuit yesterday had 4 yellowtail. Not bad. A ton of bonita over there on board the Pursuit. Native Son, he went out, had close to limits on the sculpin, then went over to Catalina Island, had mixed bag fishing, pretty darn good. So that is pretty good. And the Pride was on a half-day trip, and Sean Roberts, the captain, he was out here fishing the horseshoe kelp. He said, I don't think we saw a short barracuda all day long. They had 28 barracuda, legal fish. He said they were from 4 to 10 pounds. That's a big local gar nowadays. That's what Sean said. And he said if you tossed a chovy out with an anchovy, it was almost an instant calico bass. Some really good bass fishing. A lot of shorts, but good action. And that is something that we're so stoked about. Hopefully we'll see a lot more of that to come. This local scene has been pretty good, and as you can see, I mean, they're only fishing a few more miles offshore. They should be okay in the weather here today, so high hopes that Father's Day is going to be a good one for some local fishing. Boats like the Monte Carlo, Walt was out there, and Walt picked away at the sculpin, did pretty good, got limited out fast, came in, wrestled with the barracuda, or I guess I should say wrestled with the sea lions. I mean, there's a good amount of barracuda in there, but the dogs get on you in a hurry, and we certainly had that problem out there at San Clemente Island. It's just brutal. I mean, you hardly get a chance on some of these spots with the sea lions. They just are really, really a nuisance right now. Big pain in the you-know-what. Moving up the coast, gotta love what Cody Rogers on the Island Spirit did. Really nice fishing. 22 guys on the Island Spirit out of Ventura Sport Fishing. Of course, we had a charter with Cody earlier this year. Can't say enough about him, the boat, and the crew. They do a great job. And they had some great local fishing up there with 79 sand bass, 10 calico bass, 12 rockfish, and a couple of sheep's head. Not bad at all. The fluorocarbon working well, a 2-ounce torpedo dropper loop, sometimes a little heavier than that. Very well. Choosing a good hot bait always makes all the difference in the world. So keep that in mind. Along the beach tonight, what a great way to celebrate Father's Day. Take the kids down to the beach and let them observe the Grunion run. Last night was the first night, and then we're going to have 3 more nights in succession. So you can come down and watch the Grunion because you cannot touch the Grunion. It's still observation only right now. And the point about Grunion in terms of fishing is, of course, it attracts all kinds of predators in on the beaches. Sometimes fishing gets really good during Grunion runs, and you can fish while the Grunion are on the beach, and there's a ton of predators all in there. We've had some really outstanding nights doing it just that way. But sometimes the fish get really full because they've got an ample supply of food right in front of their little faces when all that bait moves up on the beach. So good Corvina fishing, and you can fish it at low tide on the Corvina. There's been yellowfin croaker, spotfin croaker up and down our beaches, up there around Santa Monica. Good Corvina all over that Topaz Rock jetty, excuse me, and down toward the Redondo Pier. There's been some really good Corvina fishing, light line, sand crab I like. One of the sandworms work really, really good, but I'm talking 6-8 pound test, small hook, and maybe a little sliding egg sink or a little Carolina rig works really, really well. And of course, halibut in the mix. And if you want to match the hatch, you're going to go to a Lucky Craft type lure, or you can go to a chrome crocodile. 3/4 ounce works good, or a Castmaster. Those all work really good, and they'll also work really good on the yellowfin croaker, not on the spotfin croaker. They want a natural bait. They love to bite these worms and sand crabs. It's a good way to get it done. And it couldn't be any more gorgeous. It's beautiful down here this morning. All right, go into a little bit more detail on our Amigo trip. So I mean, we were changing this trip, what we were going to do every 30 seconds, it seemed like, because that's what we have this year, constant change. I mean, Mark saw that bluefin tuna off Pyramid Head, so I got a hold of everybody and told them, bring your heavy gear, gotta have the heavy gear, don't leave it at home, we got a real shot at this. Mark goes out the next day, doesn't see it, so it's not there. Then we get a window opportunity up there at San Nicolas Island, and we're thinking, both of us, Mark and I ultimately let Mark make the decision on where we go because I don't want to get blamed for something if it goes wrong. No, I'm kidding. Mark's on the water all the time. Any captain on any boat, they know way more than I know. So I let them make the decision. But we, in this case, we're on the exact same wavelength. We go to Nick. We've got this weather window, which, as evidence today, has been few and far between this spring, and it's just been brutal. It's blowing 40 out there at Nick right now, so we can go there. Pray for a sea bass hit. Work hard for a sea bass hit. There's been halibut, white sea bass, good fishing out there. If we don't get it, we get to back it up with Jurassic Park-sized rockfish, and we certainly found that in a couple hundred feet of water. Really nice big reds and big grouper. I mean, it was really good. I caught a blue bass, or it's really a blue rockfish. I caught one that was the biggest one I've ever seen. It was the fattest, biggest blue rockfish. I'm so stoked about that I mean, it was really awesome. And that's when I actually can fish a little bit on our charters because, if it's yellowtail or sea bass or something like that, I want to capture the whole fight and the whole battle and everything else. When it's rockfish, it's some guy reeling up his line pretty much. You can get the rod doing this and stuff, but I can do that pretty quickly. I just need to get a shot of the guy with his fish. So I go nuts. I mean, I was up in the bow with my old friend Bob Gifford, and we were just having a blast catching copious amounts of big rockfish. Mark Paisano Jr. put us on a really good jag of fish, and we limited out. It was easy limits, and by the time we limited out, it was getting to be about 4 in the afternoon. I think it was about that time. It was later in the day. I was thinking, okay, time to go to San Clemente Island, get out of the oncoming weather, and give us all a break. Mark Paisano Jr. said, no way, I'm going in there one more time and check that sea bass area. We came all the way out here. We can't leave it without giving it a check. And I really admire that work ethic. Of course, it resulted in no white sea bass, but the effort was there. The hard work was there. The trying to make this day happen for his passengers and the Friedman Adventures crew and trip on this. Man, I really appreciate everything Mark and the crew did because, they could have just said, hey, there's weather coming. Let's kick this thing, go to Clemente, and then had a few hours to kind of, I was going to say relax, but, they're cleaning fish, cleaning the boat. There's no relaxing, but at least a little break from the fishing, but no way. They went in there, we fished it hard again, and no biters, so off we went to San Clemente. And I kind of covered that. We didn't get much of a bite on the backside. The wind started to come up, so we came around the front, and we played around on the front for the remainder of our final day. And we found some bonita, not wide open, but a few bonita, a few calico bass. Not too bad on the calico bass if you were fly lining a bait with fluorocarbon. I think that made a big difference. We had live squid for the whole trip, and we had sardine, so that gave us a little advantage there. As I mentioned, Martin Padilla came up with that nice big sheep's head, and he had the jackpot on both days. Martin, congratulations. Good job. I love fishing with that guy. He's a lot of fun. And, excuse me, we also ended up in a little yellowtail flurry. We had, I think, 5 fish out of that bite. Pretty small, though. I'm going to say, 5-7 pounds, something like that. Not big at all, but at least we got that flurry. But Sea Lion shut that down in a hurry. You get the feeling, the way it was biting, the way it was firing up, that we could have put 20 yellows on the boat. But the Sea Lion god said, no way, that is not going to happen today. And then we kicked it for home, and the weather was not horrible, but there was a few guys falling out of their bunks and dishes and stuff crashing down. One of those lovely days. Now I got to tell you something. This is good stuff. Okay, so Brandon Cassar, he is dedicated. He's been telling me before this whole trip, I'm trolling. I'm going to catch an albacore. I'm going to catch a bluefin. And then you got Chef Jason from Schob's in Long Beach. He was on board. life of the party, man. I mean, there's something funny coming out of his mouth 24/7. You can just ask Travante or any of the guys that I would look over and they're chuckling listening to him. So they're going to troll. So they're trolling on the way home, and I'm like, wake me up if something happens. I need to catch some winks there. So I go down, and these two guys snag a freaking gunny sack, and they're not sure whether it's a fish or not. Chef Jason fights this thing for 45 minutes. I mean, Brandon said he grabbed the rod and it was way too much, and he couldn't even get a wind on it. And so they get this freaking gunny sack on board. So that's what we caught trolling on the way home. You can see these two knuckleheads. They're great guys. A lot of fun. And it was pretty comical, I guess, back there. Thank you very much, Nick, on deck, for getting us that exclusive video of that fight with the gunny sack on board the Amigo yesterday. So we had a great time, and it's all due to the people who showed up there. I would name them all, but I'm not going to do that because I might leave somebody out. But I really enjoyed myself with each and every one of you. Thank you so much for being there. Can't thank Mark Paisano Jr., Nick, George in the galley, Mark on deck, Anthony also. They all did such a great job. 15 guys and 5 crew. That's a pretty good ratio, and it was just a really memorable trip. Not because we had wide open bluefin, as I predicted, and now have egg all over my face. Not because it was wide open sea bass or anything else. Just because it was a whole bunch of great guys who all came together for a special 2 days together. And I know we'll be doing that again really, really soon. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. A little bit later today, I'll have Mark Paisano in that interview, and either today or tomorrow, I will have that entire video of our trip, so you can see epic battles with gunny sacks, giant rockfish, and so much more. All right, good to be back with you again. Thanks so much for joining us, and I'll see you a little bit later today. A little bit early, but happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. I hope you get time to swim with your kids and have a really memorable and wonderful day. Take care, my friends.